Well, hello there. Thank you for joining me today. I've got a lot going on, but I'd like to start first with this business about meat, boo, the cows. Because today I'm going to be talking about the UN and the Roman Empire. Seems oddly suspicious to me, at least, that the UN's logo looks, well, just exactly like the Roman Empire logo. It couldn't be because they copy and pasted all this stuff, was it? I believe that they had access to different kinds of word processing early on. That's how they created that Bible, but that's my belief. You don't have to believe me, but I think the Bible was the big, big way that they introduced this script for this movie that we're going through right now. And it seems to me that the same people wrote the script that are carrying it out now, because why would you copy the same logo as the other people? Well, these people are not very creative and they're lazy, but besides that, because they have an affinity towards that. It is their people. This is who they are. So let's talk more about their psychology. But before I get started, I have talked in the past about the eating of meat. And keep in mind, at all of these rituals these people do, there's always cannibalism involved, right? Eating babies' hearts, chasing kids through woods so they can beat them and eat them, and all this stuff going on. Well, let me tell you what's going on with the beef industry in this country, because I believe 100% we're not meant to eat meat. Think about it this way. We come from an advanced society, right? So you think that while we're hanging out and whatever we call it, I don't believe the name is probably heaven, but wherever we go after we leave this game board, where do we end up, right? Do you really think that we're living there in our where we really live, and there's pastures of cows and stuff, and at night, hey, let's go kill a few cows. It's time for dinner. I just can't see that happening. It goes against every part of my brain. And we've received all of this messaging from these people. Well, you have teeth that have those points, so that means you're a carnivore. I don't believe we're meant to be carnivores, okay? I believe it is them getting us to go along with their cannibalistic rituals. And let me read you this piece. Have you ever seen the water they inject into the meat? It's not just water. So what they're doing now is well, I believe it's to contaminate the meat because the meat is part of the eugenics program. So they're injecting meat with substances, right? Everybody has agreed that this is going on, but it's not just water. It's a solution, usually salt water and who knows what else, but it prevents bacterial growth. So what you're talking, what's going on is they're injecting salt water and no one really knows what is else. But they also clean the machine. They're very thoroughly using a strong caustic soap, a good rinse with purified water, and then a strong industrialized sanitation. So that's what's used in this process to get that fluid to pump into this meat, right? And they also went on to say, did you know that they switch sanitizers every 4 weeks because some bacteria can build up a resistance to sanitizer over time? By switching it up, the bacteria doesn't have enough time to adjust. So the purpose of adding what they call a solution of up to 30% is not only to increase the weight, but also to make it last longer on the shelf. And you realize that if you eat a hamburger from McDonald's, that thing could come from 100 different sources, okay? Because how they have tricked the labeling. So anyway, the solution of up to 30% not only increases the weight, but also makes it last longer on the shelf, which gives it a later expiration date and gives them more time to be sure it sells. And that way they can cut back on unsold meats that have expired and can't be sold. But when you cook this meat after it's had this stuff injected into it, well, you can cook out the water, but keep in mind the fluoride is going to be staying in the beef. And I also have a clip down below if you choose to look at it. There is no such thing as grass-fed organic beef. So if you think, oh, I got this covered, I'm going to buy my family organic beef. Well, I think it's all been a big fraud, okay? But you do you. If you want to stick to this beef thing, then go ahead. We have been hearing nothing from these people but eat more meat, right? Everybody is pushing these all meat diets online. And what they're really missing is what our bodies really need. We're not cannibals. They are. When they have these rituals, yes, they love eating meat and human hearts and all kinds of horrific things. So they're missing what our bodies need. Because if you think that meat is the answer, all these people switching to an all beef diet, cruise around, read the comments. Not everybody's feeling so healthy. A lot of these people rave about it. Yeah, I've been eating just beef for the last month and I'm feeling terrific. Well, maybe because your diet was so horrific before, with fast food and packaged goods and all that. Yeah, maybe you're feeling better. But long term, it is not the solution. So they're pushing this thing for a reason, this carnivore diet, and it really got started online. Okay, there were a couple of players in this thing because the carnivore diet, basically eating only animal products, mainly meat, has been promoted by a handful of doctors, health influencers, and self-styled nutrition advocates. And one of the first ones was a Dr. Sean Baker on the Joe Rogan show. He did a book called The Carnivore Diet. He just pulled this information out of the air and claims it'll help your immune issues, your mental clarity, and weight loss. Okay, everything's about weight loss, right? Okay. The other person that's pushed this a lot is Michaela Peterson, the crazy daughter of Jordan Peterson. And she credits the diet with improving her severe autoimmune and mood disorders. And she talks endlessly about eating beef. So if you think Jordan Peterson has his head screwed on straight, then yeah, of course, listen to his daughter. They're both equally crazy, if you ask me. But Dr. Paul Saladino, another physician who promotes a nose to tail carnivore approach, including organ meats, arguing it's the ideal human diet. And then the topper of them all, if this doesn't make you suspicious, this person called the Liver King. The Liver King is this person, his real name is Brian Johnson. He still is a major social media figure promoting the ancestral or carnivore style diet. See, here again, where'd they get this ancestral diet from? Well, probably that Bible, right? See how it's a script for everything? So he's been promoting this ancestral and carnivore style diet by claiming, oh, they always ate this in the past. That Bible and that history book is really a good indicator for bad habits now, right? So his emphasis was eating raw organ meats and eating like a warrior. He built a massive following and purportedly made close to you heard me right, $1 billion through supplements, merchandise, and sponsorship. In the late 2022, he publicly admitted to using testosterone and other hormone boosters to enhance his physique and performance, which many saw as a huge blow to his authenticity. Of course it would, right? But people are still following him. He portrayed his results as purely diet and lifestyle based. His admission revealed the hidden factor, pharmaceuticals. It highlights how influencer health claims can sometimes be misleading or incomplete. So what happened was in late 2022, leaked emails revealed he was spending approximately $11,000 per month on anabolic steroids and human growth hormones, contradicting his previous assertions. So, and get this part, they did a Netflix show about him, which I have no intention of watching, but this has only led to one $25 million class action suit filed in New York. Now, isn't that kind of crazy? The lawsuit accused Johnson and his companies of deceptive marketing practices, alleging that they misled consumers into believing his physique was a result of his diet and lifestyle rather than steroid use. The suit also claimed that the raw meat diet promoted by Johnson was dangerous and life-threatening. So, but this lawsuit was eventually dismissed. So there may have been some settlements. I don't know. That's about as far as I want to go on the subject. But he continues to this day to sell supplements and maintains a presence on social media. So I guess you can't keep the dumb people down, can you? In case you're interested, the documentary is called Untold, The Liver King. delves into his story. Now, just for fun, just go look up the Liver King and then ask yourself, would I believe this guy? This guy running around without his shirt on and all pumped up looking. Would I believe this guy? Why do people believe these people? But anyway, not my point for today. But what I'm saying is this, is that I would be cautious of eating meat because I think you're going to be adding to your issues if you're continuing to want to add meat to your diet. That's all I'm going to say. I am having a little bit of dairy myself. I'm completely off the meat. I have some butter in the house because I occasionally have butter, and I use some eggs, and the cats also need the butter. But that's about it because I consider it too toxic. But that's all I'm going to say on the subject. So before I get started, what's going on? Well, everybody is going insane in Los Angeles because people are fighting back against all these ICE raids. They're doing it the easy way. They're going around to places that employ a lot of Hispanic people that have been there for years and years. Donald Trump said, "I'm going to get rid of all the terrorists, all the horrible, nasty people in this country, and all this stuff." Well, they're picking off the easy ones, right? These people they're calling off are in the system. They're here with green cards and whatnot. But anyway, so how it's all bouncing back is this, is that Trump can say, well, I'm fulfilling my promise to the American people. Well, yeah, I mean, rounding them up in the streets of LA with tanks and guns and stuff. Um, yeah, that is one way to take care of people. And hopefully people are starting to see this is not going to have a very friendly, a very friendly go at it, okay? Because let me see here. I'm sure you're aware that J.D. Vance is the vice president of this country, right? We all got that memo, right? Well, he is the anointed one based on Silicon Valley. What are the odds? What are the odds? I mean, in the entire Roman Empire, which I don't know a lot about the Roman Empire, but I'm looking into it. They murdered a lot of people. Rulers didn't stay in charge for very long. So it seems like a pretty legitimate question to be that, well, if they pushed J.D. Vance to kind of quietly get in there as a VP, right? Also, J.D. Vance is Opus Dei. So they quietly push him in. So what's the next step? Take out Trump, and then you got Silicon Valley completely taking over the head of the office. I mean, stranger things have happened, right? And before I forget, RFK Jr., another Jesuit. He went to the Boston College Law School. I have another show I'll be recording later because I started researching the drugs that all these people are on, like who's on what drugs because of all this stuff with the meat. So I started looking into who's taking testosterone, who isn't taking this drug, what is ketamine, because, Elon Musk, everybody say, oh, he's on ketamine. Well, they admitted these things, okay? I did not have to hunt through their medicine cabinets to get this information. But I'll come back later with a better list of what drugs they're all on, because that, of course, is going to have a huge impact moving forward. We've got a bunch of very unstable people in charge. So yeah, so I pulled out the part about all the drugs they're on because it was just too much for today. But because speaking of the Roman Empire, Elon Musk claimed that he was the reincarnation of the spirit of Alexander the Great. So you might run across that, but he did that during an interview in the 1990s, and well, I mean, they all allude to being part of the Roman Empire, and that's why we're taking a closer look today. So uh, and the Roman Empire had a lot of enemies. So they're mirroring all this right now because I think it was yesterday that Trump started banning people from other countries from coming here. The whole goal is this: get rid of all the Christians, get the Catholics and the Satanists in charge, and make this a utopia for all those people, and let's keep out all the trash. So interestingly enough, the people that they're banning are people that the United States has terrorized, flipped, and controlled and destroyed their countries. So countries of people that were destroyed by the U.S. military, the people that live in those countries are now being fully banned from entering the U.S. in any visa category. And to that, now I don't mean to sound disrespectful, because if you're in one of these countries and you had your heart set on coming to the United States, I really sincerely think this ban is for the best, because this country is what they're going to take down first, because there's brewing up all of this terror in Los Angeles right now, the fight with ICE everybody's out in the streets battling, right? The next step is to bring in the UN troops. So we're just feeding into all of that. So now we're making all these other people sound like they're the dangerous ones, right? And the danger is within the United States. It's not hiding in these other countries. So who are they banning? Well, Afghanistan. What's up with that? Are they done with robbing that country? Afghanistan is in horrific shape. Burma, Myanmar, Chad, Republic of the Congo, active genocide going on. Yeah, you stay over there. Don't come over here. Guinea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. They are not wanted here in the United States. Well, I would take it as a omen to stay away from this country because I've been saying for years the goal right now is to get so much dissension built up in this country that next step will be call in the UN troops. So, and they're only giving partial restrictions to other brown countries. You notice all these people have brown skin. I hope you caught that point. Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Turkestan, and Venezuela. Yeah, they've wiped out Venezuela. I hope you're learning to learn from Venezuela. Their horrific inflation is so bad. When you walk into a store to buy a loaf of bread, by the time you get to the checkout counter, that loaf of bread has increased in price. That is the amount of inflation Venezuela is going to. And keep in mind, at one stage in this game show board, Venezuela was considered the Paris of the South Americans. So, yeah, long fall they've taken, right? When you're friends with psychopaths, their goal is to take you down, and that's what happens. And I've talked endlessly, but I'll remind you one last time all these cops, all these ICE people in the streets right now, they're so loaded with equipment, those cops can barely swing their arms next to their bodies because of all the equipment. They're getting it all for free. It's part of the LESO Act, LESO, or the 1033 program. It's managed by the Law Enforcement Supply Office, or LESO, a division within the Defense Logistics Agency of the U.S. Department of Defense. So this traces back actually to 1944. There was a Surplus Property Act that evolved into the 1208 program, and then in 1990 they formally made it 1033 program, and in the 1997 National Defense Authorization. So originally it was they were handing out stuff going back as far as 1944. It transfers excess DoD equipment ranging from office supplies to military grade gear to federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies at no cost other than shipping or maintenance. So any cop in this country can just log on there, and if you want to buy more, you can actually get the DoD discount. So your group can get even more. If you're going to be buying things, they'll give you their discount to buy them. But all the other stuff is basically for free. In 2020, around 92% of the stuff was non-controlled, like flashlights, sleeping bags, and generators. The remaining 8% was controlled they gave out, meaning sensitive items like night vision, goggles, tactical vehicles, firearms, and drones. You realize the U.S. we have drone stations all over this country. This country, besides the military bases, there are lots and lots of drone bases. So since the inception, over $5 to $7 billion worth of equipment has been distributed to roughly 8,000 plus agencies across all United States except Hawaii for some reason. So all you have to do, they say it's because of all this stuff, it's always about the terrorism, right? Well, full disclosure, I am considered a terrorist by the U.S. government. So if you think I'm a terrorist, well, okay, you must agree with them then. So it comes out of the Department of Defense, and I will have much more about the Department of Defense soon. You realize I've been talking endlessly about the Department of Defense. They're the ones that have all the pornography on their computers. The Department of Defense also runs all the daycare centers. So, yeah, not time for today, but yeah, Department of Defense is. So, anyway, so the words you're looking for are the 1033 or the LASO, LESO. So So the concerns for critics, they argue the program contributes to militarizing policing. Oh, you think so? Disproportionately impacts communities of color. Yeah, you got that straight. And increases police violence. Yes, you get a bunch of cops, give them a bunch of guns and different things they've never tried. Give them a chance. Now, when they go out on calls, they can ride up to your house in an actual tank, right? So that's where those tanks come from. So anyway, so speaking of tanks, let's talk a little bit about this the Roman business. In the Romans, they use these tactics called the phalanx and the flanking maneuvers. And I found that when I was looking up Alexander the Great to see what in the heck Elon Musk was even talking about. But so under Alexander's great success, there were two tactics: the phalanx, it's PHALANX, and flanking maneuvers. So, what are these things all about? Since we're talking about Roman logos today, well, the phalanx formation. A phalanx is a tightly packed infantry formation used by ancient Greek armies, especially the Macedonians. Soldiers called hoplites stood shoulder to shoulder in rows, forming a human wall of shields and projecting spears. So the word phalanx, that comes from the Greeks, literally means a line of battle, log, or roller, referring to something organized, aligned, or log-like. Military use came to describe a tight infantry formation in classical warfare, the block or wall of soldiers. So, but I had a question because I've talked endlessly about those phallic symbols that are all over the place, right? Because right there, Washington, D.C., right there at the Vatican, and right there at the City of London, there are three main locations. They have these huge phallic symbols, right? So I was looking to see if the word phallus had to do with phallic. So, and all this stuff comes from the Greek, because here's what's happening. They say that before the Romans, they had the Greeks, right? Well, I'm not even sure the Greeks are even real, right? I think the Greeks give them one more thing they can refer to, like, well, the Romans did all this because they got it from the Greeks, right? I think it's part of this extension of they always have to claim where it came from, right? No matter how crazy it may or may not be. Because when I was looking at all this Roman stuff, right, I started noticing the Romans were fighting people called the Goths, the Goth, Goth. We see all that Goth design all over the place. Like this country is loaded with Goth architecture. All those buildings, look all around Europe, Goth architecture everywhere. So did that Goth come from these Romans were fighting the Goths, or is that fact that all this Roman stuff is just kind of like a big jumbled pile of words, right? Because if they had word processing early on, how hard would it be to say, okay, well, let's write the story about the Romans. And okay, so where do they get this from? How about we come up with the Greeks? Oh, okay, I got it. Now, what about the Romans? So what happened after the Romans? So that's where I think this gets a little bit mungled up because so the phallic symbolism in Rome, ancient and modern. Ancient Rome, the Romans inherited symbols and architecture from Egypt and Greece. See, now we've already got it coming back from Egypt and Greece, okay? Tall pillars and columns often symbolize power, stability, virility, and divine connection. They're really called obelisks. They're tapered stone monuments originally from Europe, were taken by Rome after conquering Egypt under Augustus. These obelisks were re-erected in Roman plazas to show dominance over both Egypt and the past. So they claim these obelisks, which are really those tall phallic symbols, right? They claim the Romans inherited them from Egypt and Greece. Well, Egypt, those pyramids, those pyramids aren't really pyramids. I don't know. So, one way to look at all this is they just kind of mumbled up a bunch of history, right? Because remember, it's called his story or history, right? So, I think this whole Egypt Greece thing is kind of a mumble of things, okay? So, because the biggest one, the first one is the Vatican has the obelisk. And remember, the Romans end up in Italy, and I'll be playing a clip here in a bit. So the Romans ended up in Italy. So the Vatican obelisk is located in St. Peter's Square in Vatican City. That one originally was from Helipos, Egypt, brought to Rome by Emperor Caligula in 37 AD, later moved by Pope Sixtus V in 1586 to its current spot. It's not pagan anymore. See, it was pagan, right? So now it's not pagan anymore in Christian eyes. It was Christianized by placing a cross on top and dedicating it to the Holy Trinity. So they took a symbol, which they're admitting right here was pagan, right? And they Christianized it. But the structure itself is visibly phallic, and some argue it maintains its ancient fertility symbolism beneath its Christian context. So, what is it? It was a uh, pagan deal, right? Well, kind of hard to explain, isn't it? But they just say, oh, we Christianize it by that cross. See how this starts to all get so fishy? And then we have the one in Washington, D.C. And remember, all three of these are in all three of those sovereign countries, like Washington, D.C., sovereign country, Vatican, sovereign country, City of London, sovereign country. So, okay, so Washington, D.C., that one was completed in 1884, right after the takeover, right? It resembles the Egyptian obelisk. It honors George Washington, but its shape evokes ancient symbols of power and masculinity. Its form is phallic, though officially it is said to symbolize strength, endurance, and leadership. The choice of an obelisk reflects Western fascination with Egypt during the 18th and 19th century. So, they're always showing us things and say, oh, that's really not what it means. You got this wrong, right? So, traditionally, the obelisk is placement in city centers. It's cross atop the Vatican one. So some researchers, especially in symbolism, esotericism, or conspiracy theories, claim these obelisks show continuity from pagan fertility cults, or that they symbolize elite power structures using ancient symbols. So Freemasonry, the Jesuits, and other secret orders are sometimes said to adopt these symbols knowingly. Yeah, I would say complete knowingly, right? And if you go over to my website, you will find I have a lot more details here. The problem with I post my show notes, but the issue is they don't always show up the same on all these different platforms. So the only place to get the actual documents that I'm producing for you to look at are on my website. And there's some confusion also with all this stuff because they claim that Rome fell in something, I don't know, 500 or 400. I get all those BCE and all those things confused. But anyways, the bottom line is this. Some of their historians claim that Rome fell in the 400 or whatever, that range, okay? Other people claim that it fell around 1450. Okay, so I have a clip down below if you want to get into the details of why. The goal here is not to become a historian, but to track the personality and what these people been up to. So, yeah, so there's even confusing times when supposedly Rome fell. Okay, so I think it's like that in the Vatican. They have that room that has a snake, that has the mouth of the snake and stuff. I forget the name, but Pope John. They sit in that room and broadcast things. Visually, it is 100% a snake, right? And remember, Vatican means snake, right? But if you question that room, they oh, you're getting the wrong idea here. No, it's not the wrong idea. They constantly do this. So what does it say here? While officially obelisks like those in the Vatican and Washington represent honor, divine authority, or leadership, their shape and origin undeniably link them to phallic fertility symbolism from ancient times. So what did the Romans do? The Romans inherited symbols and architecture from Egypt and Greece. See here again, right? Just like the United Nations seem to have inherited a logo which looks just like the Romans. So tall pillars and columns often symbolize power, stability, virility, and divine connection. I think they really connect to Satanism. So obelisks from Egypt were taken by Rome after conquering Egypt under Augustus. So, yeah, I don't know. These obelisks were re-erected in Roman plazas to show dominance over both Egypt and the past. So, okay, so they're dominance over the past. They're now at the United States and Washington, D.C. and at the Vatican, right? So, yeah, not that long ago, really. 1884 in Washington, D.C., I think that was when they planted the thing for Satanism in this country. So anyways, I believe it comes from pagan fertility cults. That's what I believe. So I have all the history down below if you really want to dig into it, because the earliest obelisks were erected during Egypt's Old Kingdom. They were typically placed at the entrance of temples, especially those dedicated to the sun god Ra. Okay, this is interesting because now we're talking paganism, right? Ra. That was their sun god. So worshiping other gods means paganism. Not that complicated, right? So, yeah, so symbolize a ray of sunlight, a link between the earth and the heavens, thus a phallic representation of divine creative power. Renaissance and Baroque popes, yeah. And all I could find about the Washington Monument was inspired by Egyptians. So built in the 19th century, here again, about the time of the takeover, almost like they planted that obelisk there to say, listen, we're here, and this is about Satanism. And kind of funny, since most of the males, well, don't need to go there today. But anyway, so they say the Egyptians invented it around 2600 BCE, and that was to the sun god Ra. The Romans imported it. The Christians reclaimed pagan symbols. So, yeah, why'd the Christians make all those pagan symbols Christian? Because it's all slippery slidey, right? Yeah, I'm going to scroll past this because, yeah, so why is this Roman stuff all copycat stuff, right? And what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to be playing a clip or two. I don't really remember. Hold on a second here. Okay, I'm just going to be playing one clip. The clip is called Ancient Rome in 20 Minutes. And it was the best clip that I found that covers the history, because my mind really, I don't remember anything about Rome, because also remember, I don't remember much about a lot of things when I was a child. So yeah, so it'll be a good clip to get us grounded in what's this all about. And then when I come back, let me scroll down here again. Oh, wait a minute.
Here are the letters the Romans gave us. And here are the countries whose languages derive from Latin. Today they cover half the world. As for the ancient Romans, the boundaries of their state encompassed their entire civilization. The Roman peace, or Pax Romana, serves as the first example of globalization. Let's take a walk across 12 centuries of the Roman history. And yes, those numerals are also a Roman legacy. What is Rome? A city on 7 hills, capital of Italy. But that is today. And 2,000 years ago, there it is. Another 1,000 years ago, there. A tiny tribal settlement of the Latins by the river Tiber. How did this manage to conquer the world? First, it was lucky with its neighbors. To the north, the Etruscans of modern Tuscany, a mysterious people whose language has never been fully deciphered. To the south, Greek colonies. These peoples all traded with each other. It was at the crossroads of their trade routes that Rome appeared. From the very start, Rome has been an open city, a safe haven for outcasts, murderers, runaway slaves. Rome offered migrants a unique opportunity to become fully fledged citizens. This will make Rome the largest metropolitan city of the ancient world. The Romans themselves believed they were descendants of refugees from the Middle East who had survived the Trojan War. Romulus and Remus were the great-grandchildren of the Trojan hero Aeneas. Nursed by an Italian she-wolf, the brothers quarreled where to site the future world capital. Romulus killed Remus, gave his name to the city, and became its first ruler. As legend has it, there were 7 kings, each of which enjoyed a lengthy reign and left some beneficial legacy. A calendar, a sewer system, or the Capitolium, a temple to the senior god Jupiter. Much of what the Romans later became famous for, aqueducts, bridges, perhaps even the gladiatorial games, were borrowed from the Etruscans. This people had invented the Latin alphabet by adapting the Greek letters for their own needs. It's not surprising that their last kings were Etruscan. Rome borrowed her military and government organization from them, while maintaining her stern, patriarchal simplicity. In 509, Rome was shaken by a sex scandal. The son of King Tarquin the Proud raped the chaste Lucretia. Tarquin was expelled, making him the last king of Rome. The Romans decided to prevent any such concentration of power ever again. From 509 onwards, they elected 2 consuls to serve a year apiece, instead of a monarch. The consuls were controlled by the Senate. This consisted of 300 fathers, patres in Latin, hence the term patricians. Those not so lucky to be born into the right families joined the plebs. Even if they were as rich as patricians, they were not entitled to take up positions in the state. It is in the 200-year struggle for these rights that the Republic, literally meaning public thing, will be formed. The plebeians would make up the backbone of the army, and to have their own way, they would threaten the fledgling state with emigration to a neighboring hill. Each time, the scared patricians caved in, introducing, for instance, the special position of a representative or tribune of the plebeians. These had the right to veto any decisions of the consuls. One of the main achievements of the struggle was the publication of the first written laws. By 287 BC, the plebeians had achieved complete equality of rights with the patricians. The unity of Rome found its best expression in the formula Senatus Populusque Romanus, the Senate and the Roman people, which still adorns the manhole covers in Rome. In 390 BC, the history of Rome could have come to an end. The city was unexpectedly taken by the Gauls. The guard dogs had sensed no danger, for which they would be crucified every year since. Geese awoke the last protectors of the Capitoline Hill fortress instead, saving Rome from complete destruction. The shaken Romans conducted a military reform. The Roman legion was divided into manipuli, making it more mobile in battle. The Roman army spent the next 100 years in constant wars. Instead of simply imposing a tribute on the conquered, the Romans would enter into a treaty of alliance with them, and the loyal allies supply Rome with a never-ending stream of recruits. Thanks to this, the Roman legions were able to stand their ground in battle with the most efficient fighting force of the time, the all-conquering Macedonian phalanx, led by Pyrrhus, a relative of Alexander the Great. The last stronghold of resistance in Italy, the Greek city of Tarentum, then hired the most costly and celebrated contemporary warlord of the time to defend against Roman expansion. Having conquered Tarentum and reached Sicily, Rome now had to take on a much more dangerous adversary, Carthage, lord of the Mediterranean. The Romans called the Phoenicians of Carthage Punics, hence the Punic Wars. They were fought over the next 100 years. In 149 BC, Rome had taken the greater part of Punic territory and that of their allies, but after each defeat, the trading power of Carthage would rapidly recover. Senator Cato the Elder began to finish every speech with the same refrain: Carthage must be destroyed. And so it was done. The city was wiped out, all of its population was enslaved, allegedly plowing salt into the earth as an eternal curse. Also in 146 BC, the Romans wiped out another city, Corinth, making Greece and Macedonia Roman provinces. Rome appropriated the colossal riches of the disintegrating empire of Alexander, but the patriarchal simplicity of Rome succumbed to the sophisticated Greek culture. Greek became, in effect, a second state language. The Roman nobility busied itself learning new words, hexameter, history, rhetoric. Cicero, the most famed orator of Rome, would come to model his speeches on those of the Greek Demosthenes. However, across this immense territory, full rights were only afforded to the Romans themselves. Even other Italians, the majority of the military, had no citizenship rights. These would demand equality, declare war, and win the right to take part in managing the state. This was a total game changer. While ancient Greece remained a collection of squabbling city-states, Rome gradually extended citizenship rights to the conquered, laying down the basis for an empire. Having conquered half the world, Rome fell victim to globalization. Cheap grain and an inflow of unpaid slave labor bankrupted the small farmers. These rushed into the cities and joined the ranks of the proletariat, those who have nothing to lose except their own offspring. At the same time, the rich grew 100 times richer, having bought land from the ruined peasants for a song. Previously united, the Senate and the Roman people split into two hostile camps. The tribunes of the people, the Gracchi brothers, would try to reconcile them. They proposed granting excess public lands to the impoverished peasants and suggested free distributions of bread to the poor. The disgruntled senators decided to suppress the Gracchi movement by force, killing the brothers and several thousand of their allies. Rome was gripped by civil wars. Social mobility for the proletariat was offered by Gaius Marius, a popular general. He began enrolling the proletariat into the army with a promise of a grant of land at the end of service. This would make the legions personally devoted to their generals. In 49 BC, two outstanding generals fought over Rome. Gnaeus Pompeius had won the eastern provinces for Rome, including restless Judea, cleared the Mediterranean of piracy, defeated Spartacus' slave revolt, and justifiably added the title Great to his name. Gaius Julius Caesar had conquered Gaul. Nowadays, they would call it genocide. He butchered 1 million Gauls and enslaved as many more. He went on to defeat the Germans and then invaded Britain. According to the law, a general had to dismiss his legions before returning to Rome, and in return have his moment of glory, a triumphal entry into the capital to the applause of the citizens. Caesar performed a hitherto unseen maneuver. He refused to submit to the Senate, and having crossed the Italian border, the river Rubicon, marched his legions to Rome. It would take him several years to defeat Pompey the Great and his other rivals, pitting Roman legions against each other. In the process, Caesar annexed new territories and gave Cleopatra the Egyptian throne. After a romantic cruise along the Nile, she would give birth to Caesarion, or Little Caesar. On his return, Caesar would add Imperator, or Emperor, to his name, title originally meaning victorious commander, and gain control of all political positions: consul, tribune of the people, and dictator. Rumor spread that Caesar wanted to declare himself king. Conspiracy was brewing in the Senate, and Caesar was assassinated. Caesar left his wealth, quite unexpectedly for all concerned, to his grandnephew, 19-year-old Gaius Octavius. This Octavian immediately joined in the power struggle. In 31 BC, he defeated his last rival, the warlord Mark Antony, who likewise had an affair with Cleopatra. The lovers would take their own lives. Octavian was left sole ruler of a vast territory. Julius Caesar ruled for 4 years. Octavian, assuming the title Augustus, meaning the Venerable or the Great, ruled for an endless 43 years. He didn't formally abolish the Republic. He simply took control of all possible positions, making his power almost absolute. But he modestly called himself Princeps, the first senator. And even though skirmishes with barbarians continued along the borders, inside them the period of Pax Romana set in, a period of peace and stability that was to last 200 years. The empire experienced an economic upswing. Bread was distributed for free to 200,000 people. On Augustus' orders, a 500-meter basin was dug at the very center of the capital, where 3,000 gladiators mimicked sea battles on real seagoing vessels. In Rome, construction was booming. Concrete multi-story districts were growing. Augustus had to introduce height regulations, limiting skyscrapers to 6 floors. And still the citizens were unhappy. They complained about traffic jams, pollution of the waters of the Tiber, and high rents. The golden century of poetry dawned. Maecenas, a quasi-minister of culture, allocated special grants to praise the value of the state. Temples would be built in the honor of Augustus, and even a month was named after him. Thus, the cult of the Roman emperors was emerging. They would come to be venerated alongside Mars and Jupiter. After Augustus' power became hereditary, the senatorial opposition has left us vivid portraits of the first emperors. Suspicious Tiberius unleashed terror under the pretext of the law on treason. Under this law, any action could be deemed offensive. It was enough not to sufficiently praise the emperor or pay at a brothel with coins bearing his portrait. In distant Judea, a preacher refusing to worship the emperor as God was crucified. Caligula wanted to make his horse a consul. A scholar and gourmet, Claudius, was too occupied with feasting and the reforming of the alphabet to keep an eye on court intrigue. One of his wives, Messalina, was giving women of easy virtue a run for their money in the brothels, and the other, Agrippina, poisoned Claudius with mushrooms to enthrone her son from another marriage, Nero. Nero, believing that he was a born actor, not an emperor, would later kill his own mother, and then allegedly the apostles Peter and Paul. Then he again, allegedly, set fire to Rome, so as to read the verses on the fall of Troy during the blaze. He would accuse the first Christians of arson, and initiated their persecution. And finally, he took his own life. Most details of this era are known from Tacitus, a historian and senator who observed the degradation of republican institutions. Fate of the empire was now decided not so much by the Senate as by the Praetorian Guards, the emperor's personal security force, created back in the times of Augustus. These suffocated Tiberius with a cushion, slayed Caligula by the sword, and hailed Claudius emperor. In all fairness, at the same time, the empire grew, expanding into new territories. Roman legions conquered part of Britain, where they founded a town called Londinium. Provinces were given a transparent taxation system, and the non-Roman nobility began to enter the Senate en masse. A grandchild of an Italian peasant, Vespasian Flavius would become the founder of the next dynasty. Vespasian and Titus, suppressing the uprising in Judea, committed genocide, again according to modern-day, not Roman standards, and reduced the Temple of Jerusalem to nothing but the Wailing Wall. On a lighter note, Vespasian had a jolly good Roman predisposition. He taxed the collectors of urine at the public toilets. And Titus, the destroyer of Jerusalem, would nevertheless obtain the title of Merciful. After a splendid triumph, he opened the Colosseum for the people. Titus would be called the love and consolation of humankind. And after such festivities had depleted the public treasury, Vesuvius destroyed Pompeii, plague devastated half Italy, and Titus became a god. The 2nd century would go down in history as the era of the good emperors. Trajan was considered by his contemporaries the best emperor ever. Rome became a million-strong city, and the empire reached its largest extent. Rome connected her new territories via a network of paved roads. This system still determines the transport map of Europe. After Trajan's conquest, Hadrian busied himself with defense, erecting massive fortifications in Britain and between the Rhine and the Danube. Pantheon was built in Rome, the first temple to be topped by a massive dome, a real architectural sensation of the day, dedicated to all the gods. Hadrian would also include his lover among them, the young Antinius. More of his images have survived than of any Roman. The last good emperor, the throned philosopher, Marcus Aurelius, would spend most of his reign on military expeditions. In between battles, he wrote his manifesto for Stoic philosophy, Meditations. It was under Marcus Aurelius' son, Commodus, that the Pax Romana, the Roman peace, came to an end. He preferred a gladiator's glory to the affairs of state. Conspirators had the emperor strangled by a fellow fighter, the slave Narcissus. Rome sank into chaos. The next 100 years brought a sequence of random emperors proclaimed by the army. Taking their turn on the throne were a liberated slave, a fortune seeker who bought the throne at an auction, General Punic descent who would place statues of the former enemy, Hannibal all over the empire, a Syrian priest of the sun, and a former shepherd who owed his popularity to his powerful physique. In 212, Emperor Caracalla, half North African, half Syrian, granted Roman citizenship to nearly all free subjects of the empire. The idea that you could be a Roman in Judea, in Africa, or any other corner of the empire at all might well be the main legacy of Rome still in use today. By mid-century, Rome was already in the midst of such a crisis that the whole provinces were starting to split off. The Gauls, for instance, proclaimed an empire of their own. Order would be restored by the son of a liberated slave, Diocletian. Having started his career as a soldier, he would end up an absolute monarch, an astonishing example of social mobility. Diocletian split the empire into four, with 4 co-rulers at 4 capitals, situated closer to the frontier. Rome lost its significance. The Senate became a town council. The country was now ruled by an army of officials personally reporting to the emperor. Thus, the ancient world, centered around the concept of a free community and free citizens, came to an end. From the princeps, the first senator, the emperor had become the dominus, a title by which slaves addressed their masters. The citizen became a subject, the warrior turned into a soldier, and the farmer a semi-serf. Diocletian himself resigned from the post of emperor 20 years later and went off to his estate to grow cabbages. After Diocletian's departure, the co-rulers were fighting for power. Constantine, the future Saint Constantine the Great, emerging victorious. Before the crucial battle for Rome, he allegedly had a vision of a cross. After this, he made all religions equal. After 300 years of persecutions, the Christians came out of the catacombs and were now entitled to build churches alongside the temples of Augustus and Mars. Constantine would take the cross from Jerusalem to the new capital of the Roman Empire, Constantinople. Theodosius I would make Christianity the official religion and begin to destroy the ancient temples. He would also be the last emperor of a united Roman Empire. His sons split the empire into west and east. The eastern half would live another 1,000 years and is known to us as Byzantium. The western part would fall victim to the great migration of peoples. Rome, founded by migrants, would fall to the onslaught of a new wave of refugees. Ironically, the last ruler of Rome would be called Romulus.
Okay, I'm back. Just to be perfectly clear, I don't know who listens to my shows. I don't know if you've listened to other shows before or not, but the issue with the dirty electricity in my home is this. It crossed the brain barrier in my brain, and I'm moving into dementia. And the good news is this, is that I luckily, because I've had to work alone all these years, I have really good systems set up. So I have several shows that I'll still be sharing with you down the road here. And fortunately, I have files already completed that I'll be sharing. I'm struggling and I'm trying to get these shows recorded in the best way that I can. And so like I said, I'm double checking myself. Everything is going along and going fine, but it's getting worse. It's been coming on for quite a while now, and it is in fact getting worse. So, luckily, like I said, I have several shows that I've already completed. Like, what drugs are they all on? How is the robbery going with all the financial stuff? So I have a whole bunch of shows I'll be sharing with you as I go along here. And like I said, fortunately, it's because we're kind of running towards the final chapter here. And I've been doing this work for so many years that all the things that I've said in the past are kind of boiling into what's going on now. And I've had files on all that organized. So in that clip, what I learned was what's with all these Gothic designs, right? And then the Roman Empire ends in Italy, right, where the Catholic Church is, right? Or did we all just begin in Italy? I don't know. So let's talk about these logos. I was just cruising around. I've had this file for quite a long time, but I noticed that the UN logo looked just like the Roman logo. So I went looking further. The UN logo with its laurel wreath and globe does indeed resemble ancient Roman imagery. Particularly, the Roman was called the SPQR, and that was the era Roman emblem. And that was used, the earliest use of the SPQR was used around the mid 3rd century BCE during the Roman Republic, likely formalized after this other person became the voice of the people. Okay, so we got that. That's when it started. The SPQR became a standard part of official inscriptions, military standards, monuments, and coinage. It's seen on legionary banners, state buildings, documents, and public works. So it was used under the Roman period, 509 to 27 BCE. It was used during the Roman Empire before that, and then it was not commonly used in the Byzantine. But anyway, so this last logo, the SPQR, is the one that was used to whatever this date was to when Rome fell. So they used the SPQR during that entire last part of it, okay? Because even though emperors like Augustus centralized power, they kept the SPQR symbol to show continuity with the Republic. It gave the appearance of shared governance even as emperors became absolute rulers. So legions continued to march under SPQR standards. Emperors issued edicts under the name of Senate and people. So, and then it ended on the fall of Rome. They say that Rome fell at 476 BCE, but other people said it fell in 1450s. Take your pick, right? SPQR faded from formal political use, but was sometimes revived in later Roman nostalgia during the Holy Roman Empire, Italian Renaissance, or fascist Italy under Mussolini. So SPQR has had continuous symbolic life for over 2,000 years. So yeah, they like that logo, right? So, and it became started as a statement of shared governance in the Republic. It became imperial branding under the emperors, and it was revived by popes, nationalists, and modern city authorities. So it appears to me they like that logo, right? And on my webpage, I have a bunch of logos to show you the similarities. The SPQR, the Roman Empire logo, has that eagle, or in some cases, it might really be the phoenix. Sometimes when they have the longer necks, it really means the phoenix, and sometimes it's the eagle. But yeah, under France, they had the same eagle. Holy Roman Empire, they had the two-headed one. So it started with the Roman Empire, and then I show you pictures. They all remain the same. So SPQR, the Holy Roman Empire, had a logo with the two-headed, long-headed looking eagle, right? France, called the Napoleonic France, had a single eagle-looking thing with a shield. Well, that exact same logo that they have on this Napoleonic France logo, which came after the Holy Roman Empire logo, looks exactly, and I mean exactly, like the U.S. Great Seal. Then we have the League of Nations. They first adopted that logo under the League of Nations. So I consider that logo to be extraordinarily telling, right? So, why would you, if you're not the Romans, why would you keep using the Roman logo, right? So, the SPQR stands for Senatus Podemoicus Romanus. The Senate and people of Rome is what it stands for, okay? So, why is the US symbol the exact same thing? So, first seen around 509 BCE with the founding of the Roman Republic, became widespread as a civic and military identifier on coins, monuments, standards, and documents. So it doesn't seem random to me, right? Because Rome did not have a single flag before the SPQR, but rather sacred, religious, and symbolic items like these things they call these fasces, animal standards, and mythological images. SPQR marked a formal shift toward a unified civic political identity. Well, I mean, come on. So, um, and these fasces, they call them. The design is a bunch of elm or birch rods bound with red leather, often with a single blade axe emerging from it. So, yeah, I don't know why you would have and I have all the details down below if you want to know why they have those animals and stuff on the things, but um, they have the she-wolf. Yeah, they have all these people they believe in, these mythological entities. So that's why the UN logo looks like the Roman logo, because my opinion, you can have your own opinion. My opinion, they designed the exact same logo because they're proud of who they are. And in the past, I've talked about the Middle Eastern logos because, they took over the Middle East after the Ottoman Empire around the early 1920s. I did shows about all that. Well, somehow all of the Middle East countries' logos ended up looking remarkably the same. They use that red, the green, and the black. And they all have different flags and different stars and stuff. And to me, I worked in graphics and design for many years. To me, what they did was this. Hey, we need a bunch of maps and we need a bunch of flags for these countries we just took over. We like the color red. Hey, we like green. And hey, how about you throw in some black and some stars? And they sat down and a graphic artist designed all of these and they just copy and pasted one after another, made tiny little changes, and that's how they were done. I don't think it was any more complicated than that. These people are lazy, talentless freaks. So of course they just sat down. Yeah, we're gonna take over the Middle East. Yeah, let's make all their maps, their logos look like this. So I have all of that down below. Take a look for yourself. So because I'm trying to track when they did all these things, right? So they started changing their images around once they took over. And for example, they gave them all these pan-Arab colors, red, black, white, and green. So, and these first appeared in the Arab Revolt flag of 1916. So, and was designed during World War I to unite Arabs against the Ottoman Empire. Hang on for a second. So yeah, and looking at these maps, we start to get, I mean, not these maps, these flags, we start to get a clearer picture of when the takeover was, right? Because why all of a sudden in 1916 were they redesigning new flags? Well, because they took over, right? And then in the Islamic symbols, they use those crescent and stars. They're found on flags like Turkey, Tunisia. They use that crescent moon. That's all from their satanic symbolism. That's all that it is. So they say the modern political partitioning of the Middle East primarily took place after World War I, starting around 1916 to 1923. when the Ottoman Empire, which had controlled much of the region for centuries, collapsed? Or was any of that even real, right? Is this simply the date that the game board started and charged? We're all in the game, right? I don't know. Could have started in the 1900s because it started with the Sykes-Picot Agreement of 1916. Then, of course, in 1917, they were dishing out land over in Israel for the in Palestine for the Jews. So I don't know. 1920, they had the San Remo Conference. The League of Nations formally assigned mandates, control of former Ottoman territories to European powers. Britain got mandates over Palestine, Iraq, and Transjordan. France got mandates over Syria and Lebanon. 1921 to 1923, borders were drawn and new states or mandates established, setting the foundation for many of today's Middle Eastern countries. So, and the flags mostly came into use after these partitions. So, yeah, I looked at after the 1920s, these flags, they got new flags, right? And I also looked at the flags over in Southeast Asia because I've never looked at those flags. Those flags would include places like Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Maldives. So this area is also sometimes called the Indian subcontinent. So yeah, they all ended up with flags flags that were all kind of look the same, right? So, and here again, just take a look for yourself. See what you think about it. I'm not going to spend all week on talking about flags, but it seems particularly odd to me that around that time, borders got redrawn, flags got redrawn, right? So then the UN logo versus the Roman Empire symbolism. The UN logo, what is that? It's a globe with latitude, longitude lines surrounded by laurel leaves. What is the Roman SPQR logo? Well, Roman standards, banners, and coins often included laurel wreaths, a globe, and eagles to symbolize conquest, unity, and global dominion. Both suggest global authority, peace through order, and civilization leadership. So, and then I also looked at the Middle Eastern logos. Well, their strong use of eagles and falcons. They use that geometry stuff. They got the green and gold colors going on. So, and then I looked at other logos that reflect it. Who are you going to call? The World Health Organization. They have the identical laurel wreath and globe like the UN. The World Bank or IMF, they have globe-centric economic unity imagery on their logo. NATO, star with compass points, control, and military direction. The EU is a ring of stars showing unity, empire, perfection, similar to a halo or crown. So many logos reflect esoteric geometry shared in elite or secret societies. So they have the all-seeing eye, the triangle and eye. That's found in the U.S. Great Seal and many bank logos. They have the compass and square through Freemasonry, symbolism of measurement, order, and creation. They have the pyramids and obliques, often found in military, Masonic, or Vatican imagery. So, well, it appears to me that they all look alike, right? And why do they look alike? Well, because empires and institutions repeat visual codes to evoke legacy, authority, and control. So, yeah, so I have lists of all those pictures. I would hope you would take a look at them yourself because it starts off, they all have the same symbolism. And there's a meaning for all that. Let me see. So, and this is the catch point. I left the best for the end. Where else did I find that SPQR logo today? Well, I found the SPQR logo today being used by a group of Romas. Romas. Yeah, you heard me right. The Romas are using the SPQR. And let me see here. The Roma, I found this article when I was trying to wrap up writing this show, and I'll read it to you. What is on the front of Roma jerseys? Explaining the meaning of SPQR letters across the shirts for Europa League final. So there's this multiple Italian clubs, including Roma, as well as Inter, were left without a main shirt sponsor after suspending their deal with crypto blockchain company Digital Byte. So what had happened was both of these, I know nothing about sports, okay, so I'm just going to stumble past this. But both of these clubs have had Digibytes, the crypto people, as a sponsor since 2021, each signing a 3-year deal with a crypto company. So they signed this deal, and the Romas reportedly received some early payments this season, but those eventually came to a stop. So, these people just can't help themselves. So evidently, this group called Digibytes, and they're in the crypto business, right? Crypto. Remember, crypto Jews. So they're telling you right there that this is all fake money, right? So they're in the crypto business, and they made a deal for the Roma team. I guess they're a soccer team or something, to wear this SPQR on their shirts to represent these people. Now, why they picked out the SPQR, well, I don't know, but evidently they didn't pay them. So I don't know if they're still wearing it on the shirts or not. But I'd like to close with something actually a little bit more serious. I have this published down below. I have been talking endlessly about the Kigali principles. What I believe is going to happen is they're stirring up all this dissension, because remember, they claim the United States is loaded with terrorists, people like me who are out there to do no good, right? So the Kigali principles, and I've talked endlessly about Africa. I don't have the energy to go there right now. After they slaughtered all the people in Africa on purpose, I'll try to dig up I did a show about it, but after it was probably one of the shows I did about the Congo. Anyway, they set up all those people to get murdered. And then they said, oh, wait a minute. We're going to put something in place so this never happens again. And they did the Kigali principles. And that's where that came from. And I'll try to look for that show. But anyway, so the Kigali principles are how they're going to set up the rest of us, because all they have to do is build up more conflict. And then what they'll do is the Kigali principles. The Kigali principles on the protection of civilians are a non-binding set of 18 pledges for the effective and thorough implementation of the protection of citizens in UN peacekeeping. The principles on the protection of civilians emanated from the highest level international conference on the protection of civilians held in Rwanda on 28 to 29 May 2015. The Republic of Rwanda, the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and the United States of America. See, isn't it interesting? The Netherlands, right? You know, all the porn, all the filth is running through the Netherlands, and where they go from Netherlands, they run it up through Belgium. Good morning, NATO. They run it up to Belgium, and then they ship it all through Europe and that part of the world. Okay, so it's interesting that they're involved in this Kigali thing. I mean, the Netherlands, the people that ran this whole deal are running the Netherlands. That's why all the crime is in the Netherlands. So, and that's why it's transit for all this horror. So I'll keep reading here. The Republic of Rwanda, the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and the United States of America initiated the principles, bringing together the first 9 signatories: Bangladesh, Ethiopia, Italy, Netherlands, Rwanda, Senegal, Sri Lanka, Uganda, and Uruguay. And isn't that interesting? The 2 white countries that brought this all together was the Netherlands and the USA. Ha! The Kigali Principles addresses the most relevant aspects of peacekeeping, including assessment and planning, force generation, training and equipment personnel, performance and accountability, While they are framed around the protection of civilians, the responsible implementations of the principles would address much broader deficiencies that undermine the effectiveness of peacekeeping operations conducted in volatile situations, including peacekeeper abuse. So anyway, so I have the whole thing down there for you to take a look at also under the show notes. So yeah, Kigali principle is going to kick in. So this show today was to show all of the connections. So if you think any of this is done in isolation, I'm here to inform you it is all part of the plan, not the bug in the system. And why do I always say evil has to come packaged as help for it to work? So be safe out there and goodbye for now.